Yo, what is up, guys? I am super hyped to bring you a very special episode of .p Plays. This week we're playing Darkest Dungeon, and I've got with me my dungeon mate, Wazoo, but beyond that, we've got a super special guest, Mr. Chris Bourassa from Red Hook Studios himself, the creator of Darkest Dungeon. What is up, sir?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm starstruck and like fan struck and like Twitter painted and just really to be experiencing the Darkest Dungeon and then to be talking to the person whose like hand went into creating it is kind of, it's surreal for me, and I don't want to speak for Wazoo, but man, it's got to be the same, right, man?
Oh yeah, I'm looking at this game and I just see so many mashups of things I love, you know, from the Lovecraftian element to D&D, to roguelikes, to the, I don't know, like innkeeper-like management of all the other things in the game, from your party to the buildings and everything. It's just a really well-done game, and that's a no short reason, because you seem to have put your heart and soul into it, Chris. So can you kind of talk to us a little bit about what started to form this idea of the Darkest Dungeon? Because it's such a good idea. It seems like it was like always on the table and no one's done it, and then you guys just nailed it. So can you talk to the history of it at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my business partner Tyler Sigmund and I sort of cooked this up together, actually. I had a loose concept sitting around in a sketchbook, and I met him working at a studio in Vancouver called Backbone, and we became friends, and we played a lot of poker together. And I think you can kind of see a little bit of that in the game as well. But we would sit down, and we were both working these other jobs, and we would just talk about games and where they were at, and looking at trends, and drinking scotch, and going over game ideas, because we were desperate to find like a project that we could attach ourselves to. But the timing never really lined up with our jobs, and the projects were sort of hit and miss here and there. And I can't remember exactly when it was, but probably about a year and a half before, we really got started. I had this loose idea, and we sat down and talked about it. And then, the next time we hooked up, we didn't really want to talk about anything new, so we just brought all that stuff back out again. And then the time after that, it was a repeat performance. And the more we talked about this sort of idea of like vulnerable heroes, and your cleric refusing to heal, or your tank refusing a heal, like just these sort of mildly subversive ideas within the RPG context. These kind of little micro kind of narratives, I guess, popped up. Like we just laugh about potential stories and outcomes that could happen. So the game was really based on the sort of water cooler descriptions, the things you see in a lot of the reviews and a lot of the tweets about the game. That's where it started from, is, wouldn't it be funny if, could you imagine if this happened or that happened? So we just worked out from that idea, and we've both been, Lovecraft fans for a long time. He's got a lot of experience doing board game design. And, when we decided that we wanted to get serious about it, we kind of looked at it like, okay, we're going to make a game. So we've washed up on a desert island. What can we salvage from the luggage that's washed up with us? So, board game influence, definitely got to have some Lovecraft. We know generally the idea that we're going to do strongly 2D, because that's just my preference for working. I've done some 3D, but it doesn't, interest me as much as just straight up illustration. So we just kind of pulled from all those influences and strengths, and crafted the game to match that, I guess. I'm very, very early on, and got started from there.
I think you succeeded. Like, I'll just tell you that now. That I feel like what I'm playing is it's like the RPG for me in a way, because I can hop in, I can do a dungeon. It's not so hard going down like The Witcher 3 or something like that. It's not like a commitment to sit down and play. And I think that's where a good chunk of the popularity of the game comes from, is not only is every experience going to be different wherever you're roaming to in the lands of Darkest Dungeon, but at the same time, it's like these little events of someone going paranoid and failing their check or whatever, and refusing to be healed or something like that. That is
Yeah,
playing.
bringing the whole party down with them, or and then the one guy goes heroic, and that's a nice little story, and you can play it episodically, or you can marathon it.
Yeah, exactly. It's good for both.
Every run either becomes its own single story or a chapter in like an epic that you're telling with those heroes. With different heroes falling, new ones coming into the fold. If you're playing this game, if you're people in our community love to create content, whether they're writing articles on our website or making videos for their YouTube channel. If you're Twitch streaming the Darkest Dungeon and you want to name your heroes out of people that are in your chat room, it is a really great way to interact with the people around you. I mean, name them after your kids if you want to have a hard time going through the Darkest Dungeon, man. the game, it's really cool to hear you talk about that, because I cheated and did a little. I watched your presentation that you did on creative design regarding the game, and to hear you kind of talk about using what you and your co-creator Tyler had in your wheelhouses in terms of strengths, and what that means in terms of applying your idea to something like a game like the Darkest Dungeon, where going in, or you maybe have an idea going in that we're gonna put a Kickstarter behind this to help get it going and get the idea out there, and then we're going to roll into early access so we can make sure we get community feedback, and that the idea that we've kind of created has the ability to grow into an even stronger thing through the interaction of people actually playing the game and giving us their idea of what it feels like when you play it now that it's out of early access. And it's weird because it must feel weird to you. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but we're like a couple of dudes that are just like gushing on, oh my God, the Darkest Dungeon. My guy, the farthest guy I've gotten is like level 3. Like I haven't even gotten a hero to level 6. I've probably restarted like 15 times.
Oh, that's why you're being so nice. Like,
yeah.
you want to do this podcast with me again when you've like bled a little bit more. You won't be as
dude, I already feel the weight of it, but I also see like there's like a sliver of light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what keeps you like going back in. And I mean, I just had to pull out of a dungeon right before we got on this call because everybody in my party was about to die, and I'm like not willing to like let my graveyard start taking tombstones just yet. But this is like a process that is like is going to unfold over time. There's so much available to a person that either wants to just, like Wazoo was saying, you dive in, you're checking out a couple games at a time. But as you're doing it, you're starting to learn these different interactions. You're starting to. I was gonna, I was like thinking, what if you asked me what my favorite class is? And I'm like, I don't know. They all seem pretty fucking cool to me at this point. I haven't like figured out like the OP combination. I'm staying away from like Reddit threads that are like gonna. If there's any way to break the game, like I don't think that this game is too rough and has too many roles that don't work in your favor for you to ever own the Darkest Dungeon, in my opinion. But getting to experience that and try to figure it out, it's been a really cool thing, and the amount of what you've put into the artistic direction of it, it sits with you. When you leave and you think about the Darkest Dungeon, you see it in the art style that you've created. When you see people's avatars on Twitter and they're in the art style of the Darkest Dungeon, guess what? You're thinking about the Darkest Dungeon. And you mentioned that in the design talk that you gave about kind of having something that can exist outside of itself, and that you nailed it there again too. So congratulations. I mean, are you guys stoked on this thing or what?
It's very different being on the development side because like a year leading up to early access launch, like our Kickstarter was an important validation point for us because we were sort of ready to pull the plug. Like if we flopped on Kickstarter, we'd be like, okay, we need to seriously rethink what we're doing here. But that went well, so we proceeded forward with development. But by the time we launched the early access version, we'd been crunching like crazy. Everybody was right up against the wall financially speaking, because we put all that Kickstarter money just went into development. It wasn't you can't get a lot of limos over a sustained amount of time for 300 grand. Like it goes quick. But so we put all that money into the development. So your living costs and all that, and we were talking earlier about family and that kind of thing. There's a very real pressure with that. And so the euphoria and the like fucking stoked, that happened at the early access launch. That was because then we're like, boom, the sales were instantly really strong. Everybody really responded to the game, and that was just exhilarating and actually, to be honest with you, pretty emotional, because you've got so much riding on it. Like I mentioned, the influence that poker actually had on the game, and it felt a lot like just we're playing high stakes poker with our careers and our and our life savings.
Dude, you were making a run, like you were going on
Yeah.
a run then.
So you know, this recent launch has been fantastic. Like all the streamer uptake, you know, the review scores, we couldn't be happier with the things that people have been saying about the game. And very, very humbled by all of that, and just, you know, really grateful to have found like an enthusiastic audience and a community. But the feeling is a little different. It's not pure like stokedness or, you know, just Mountain Dew like last time. This is more like red wine. Like it's nice.
Awesome.
I'm gonna have a glass, but I'm so tired that I'm gonna pack it in early. You know, so it's a different feeling, and I didn't expect that. I thought I would be just, you know, super amped up, but it takes a lot out of you making games. It turns out.
Well, you crossed the finish line. At least this first one. I mean, who knows what's on the other side of it in terms of what you have to do to continue to support the game going forward. But are you at least feeling like a little bit of pressure's been lifted, and you're kind of getting a little bit of some breathing room going right now? You've earned
absolutely.
it, to say the least, considering what you just gone through.
Yeah, it's great, and I think like the you know, having solid performance as far as like the review scores go takes a big weight off. And you know, we love the game. Like, we're excited to support it, add to it, build it over the year, and that's gonna be a lot of fun, especially with a lot of the risk taken out. You know, at this point we can just sort of enjoy the craft again. So it's gonna be awesome. It's been really great.
You've got a bona fide franchise on your hands at this point. Like, it's there. It's a thing now.
It'll be interesting to see what we do next. I mean, we haven't really talked about it because we've just been so focused on like launch support, and then, you know, fulfilling those Kickstarter obligations, like backer design trinkets, backer design heroes, and the extra character class is going to come in March. So I'm right back to work doing that stuff now. I haven't really had time to think about like what's next, but I've always really loved the Blizzard kind of model where they did like Warcraft 2, and then they did like the different thing, like the StarCraft. So I mean, it would be cool. I'd certainly no shortage of ideas to do a follow-up to Darkest Dungeon, that's sure.
It seems rife for that. It feels like you could go so many places with the core game that you built, and like that the whole board game analogy. It feels like this is something that could be adapted into anything you could really think of, and like what limits it is whatever you want to limit it by. I mean, I feel like the entire game is such a well-designed piece of work from, I don't know, an aesthetics point of view, that it only makes me happier to see what you guys are going to do with expansion content and all this other stuff that you could do with it. I'd like to talk about the art direction and style and kind of where you drew your inspiration from and where you started, because I see a lot of things that feel like they're kind of smatterings from other worlds, and other, you know, design choices that add to that atmosphere, the bleakness, and sometimes, you know, the scant victories. So what were your early inspirations? You said you had some notebooks filled up and stuff. Is this your style that you've been developing over the years, and now you just finally get a chance to showcase it?
Yeah, I love this question. I was a digital painter and art director for a long time, 10, 13 years, and you know, working in Photoshop the whole time. And I've done stuff for Games Workshop and Privateer Press, and like, you know, marketing stuff for AAA, like rendered. You know, everyone's fussing over the specularity on like the glint of the chipped paint on the armor. And it's slow going, all that render work, and I knew that if I just tried to do the art for this, you know, indie game that we're gonna do, if I tried to do it just the best I could do, and that was my measurement of getting it done, I knew I'd never finish it, because I'm an artist and I hate everything I do. So I needed a way to take success outside of myself, like externalize what a success condition is for a piece of art, so that I could continue to make progress even if it wasn't my favorite thing in the whole world. And then I just looked at the themes of the game. It's dark, it's right there in the name. Obviously it can't be super cheerful, not a lot of saturated colors and bright stuff like that. It's gritty. All the heroes are flawed. Everybody's got kind of dirt under their fingernails, so no one should be hot, you know. Like, I love pinup art, There's a bunch of it on my DeviantArt, but it didn't make any sense to do like beautiful people in this game world, because it would just be a distraction, you know. So we really tried to grow a strong tree trunk of creative direction, and then have everything pull out of it: the audio, the art, the design choices, you know, like autosave and things like that. All came from these sort of central ideas, and everything we did was in service to that. So artistically, once I understood, you know, exactly what it needed to be and what the game wanted, I looked at medieval woodcuts. I looked at a lot of like Albrecht Dürer. You know, he does like these crazy horsemen of the apocalypse, like riding out of the moon, and, you know, lamenting skeletons holding parchments, and it's just awesome. And obviously there's a bunch of Mike Mignola from Hellboy in there, Guy Davis, Chris Bachalo, just these comic book artists that I kind of grew up with. And I wanted to go back to that because I wanted to find a faster, production friendly way of working that would like a consistent sloppiness, so that I could work quickly, but it would be, you know, a lack of attention to every detail would be forgiven, because, you know, everything would sort of coalesce together in an attractive package. And the fact that I didn't render the chips and, you know, on the arm perfectly could just sort of fall by the wayside. It didn't matter, and just concentrate on the things that were important.
That's very interesting. I can definitely see that. It feels more like a story being told in a way for that reason. The lack of attention to detail in ways. It's like you're getting a sketch of what happened, and it's like, what's the story? Being there, doing
it's like
it.
like an imperfect recollection, almost like
Exactly.
Like we talked a little bit about making the game look and feel like it was like an illuminated manuscript describing what happened. So you're like playing inside an old book almost, in a way. You know, from an influential standpoint, there's buttons and mouse overs and pop-ups and the rest of it, obviously. We didn't take this like storybook thing super literally, where you're turning pages and stuff like that. But just to have that idea that, you know, it's very flat. It's like not super perspective-y. Things are kind of janky and broken and almost compressed. And then of course the characters have no eyes. And
No
that was
eyes,
just,
man.
yeah,
No
that was
eyes.
that was to
All
make everything
soul.
just feel soulless and
Oh, dude.
you know, just heavy and despair ridden. But then, you know, just like how you mentioned earlier, how the game sort of, you know, it'll kick you around for a while, but you always feel like there's a chance of victory. That there's a dash of cuteness to it, I think. At least that was my intent. Like, everyone, you know, all these they're super terrible, the monsters, and you know, the heroes are they look cool. I think they look cool, you know, when I'm doing the wallpapers and stuff. But the in-game guys have just a touch of cuteness with their proportions, and I think that just helps remind players that it just gives you that glint. Like it's so overwrought, and the writing style that I went with is like, you know, really 1920s like Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe kind of stuff. Everything is just so heavy that it's melodramatic essentially. And it verges on campy, but we wanted to stop short of that. And I think that, you know, the character proportions play into that sort of message a little bit, where it's, you know, they're soulless and eyeless and hunched over and covered in black, but yet they're kind of adorable. Like, their suffering is almost like, oh, you know, it's like a little gerbil's having a rough day, you know. So it keeps you away from it as a player, but then the stakes are really high, so you're invested at that level.
It's interesting because you see a lot of games that promote this really like difficult type of experience. You know, you have like Dark Souls, and I see some Binding of Isaac, at least just in the ways that the roguelike element, I feel like. But this game does such a great job of just right out of the gate making you feel that you really want to restore the manor and everything, and you want to get out there and explore. And even though it's terrible and it's awful and you've already lost some people, like, you still want to get out there. You want to figure out what's out there. And that sense of wonderment that propels the game is pretty remarkable from a game design point of view, because I was just thinking about it, and even these huge AAA titles, I'm not wrapped up in the story until I've invested considerable time into it, you know? Like, I don't care that much, but I'll play the game because it's fun. In this game, it's like I've created myself an incredible experience just through all these random dice rolls. And so that story to me is a personal experience, and in that way I put my own, I don't know, emphasis on it, on what I find important. I feel like that's the most role-playing game that's come out in the past couple of years for that reason alone.
Yeah, you're building your own kind of tragic epic as you play. Like, I always think of like our approach to storytelling on this game was a lot like a comic book in that, you know, how your mind fills in what happens in the gutters of between the panels. You know, you'd see a guy winding up for a punch, and then in the next panel, the other dude's like bent over with a bloody nose. You assume based on the quality of the artwork, you know, what happened, and you fill in that stuff that happened in the little gap in the gutter, and that was really a big influence on how we wanted to tell the story in Darkest Dungeon. You know, we anchor you at the beginning of the game. We give you some cold hard facts. We get in there. We let you guys sort of, you know, your imaginations run wild. You have your own heroes that you name, and you see their rise and their falls and their struggles. And as you fight the bosses, you uncover like a little bit more. But we wanted to give you your imagination, you know, a big sort of play space, and almost really just provide you with the tools to like create your own game, kind of Game of Thrones a little bit. And yeah, I mean, I'm actually particularly proud of the ending, to be honest with you, but I don't want to spoil it. So
Not for our viewers.
Not for me, dude. I still got to get there. I saw somebody tweet out that they'd beat the game and beat it on New Game Plus, and we're looking for something else. And I'm like, fuck you, dude. I just found out that my person is a gambler and a known cheat. I can't do shit to reduce their stress. That's super fucked. But it's cool because the game has all of these interactions and all of these mechanics that are the same for everybody. However, the way that they unfold is different. So although me and Wazoo are playing essentially the same game, when we come together to talk about it, we're telling our story. And we might have clicked on the same fucking level, went down into the same dungeon, but the way that story unfolded was different for each of us, and it creates a conversation that is just like, it allows for the game to exist outside of just when you're inside of the game. It draws you back into it. And I love comparing it to Witcher 3 because for the people that are listening and are part of our community, they all know how much we got into The Witcher 3 when that came out, and it's a great, huge blockbuster example of what, like, you know, shit tons of money and shit tons of time can get you in terms of production. But I go to Witcher 3 because of all the hype and everything that's built by that. When I walk by the window that's got the Darkest Dungeon in it, and I see that in there, I'm like, oh, what the fuck is that? So I turn around and I go walk inside that place, and the game draws me into it in a way and presents a world that you don't have to be sold on it. It sells itself. And again, what Wazoo was talking about in terms of creating your own story, that it can't end. If you got, it's like, oh, Darkest Dungeon goes to the snow. Oh fuck, I'm interested. I'll check that out. I don't want
Goes to the snow.
I love that. Yeah. Darkest Dungeon 2, go to the snow.
What your like Yetis look like? I'll look at that shit all day.
I see the designed Yeti in my mind, by the way. Perfect.
It's just and man, again, to have a conversation with you and talk about and hear, you know, from the horse's mouth things like board game design, and to see that and the replayability that we love about tabletop games. I mean, these guys that were Wazoo and his brothers, they board game it up like hardcore, so they know, you know, those are things that you just can't peel away from. And I can't tell our fans out there enough, if you have not bought this game already, you have too many stress and afflictions in your life. Get some of those taken care of at the Sanctuary. Come back, pick up the Darkest Dungeon. You will not be disappointed.
It's an incredible piece of work for several reasons, and I've kind of been trying to look at it more artistically. Usually we get people that, if they're involved with the game, they're like involved with the community, or, you know, we never get someone who's so involved with the game that like this is your baby. And now that you're kind of saying like the comic book influences and all your other influences, like it's really making it clear, but it also hides those influences rather well. I feel like you feel like it's familiar, but it's still a brand new like fantasy world that you've never seen before, even though it's taken all those ideas and kind of blended them together. I was telling Easy just the other day that this feels like a game that I wanted to play like back in the golden age of RPGs or something, like late 90s, early 2000s. Like I feel like it's a game that could fit there, or it could fit here. And that's what I like about the whole Kickstarter generation is these products are getting out there because people support it and they see how incredible it can possibly be.
It gets in front of eyes that it might not have ever had a chance to get in front of, and people say, I would love to experience that. How can I support it?
It's a great platform. You know, I sure it has its you know, infamous
Star Wars
RPGs as well. Yeah, but yeah. But it's also a really great tool for developers and potential developers, just like I had mentioned earlier, as like a validation point. We released our first trailer for Darkest Dungeon in August of 2013, I believe, and then we got good response to that, and that was essentially like an opt-out point for us, because our opportunity cost is pretty high. Like, family, we're all pushing 40. We can't live on ramen and sit on milk crates kind of thing. So we needed to know that we weren't headed down like just a disastrous path. So that first trailer was a good litmus test. But Kickstarter was really fantastic because it, exposed us to a community. It got us, like you said, in front of eyes that might not have seen it. All of which is fantastic. Helps with funding, which is, cannot be understated. But it also gives you a little bit of confidence to go forward when you're like, boom, okay, people are excited about this. If this is any indication of the general gaming public, we at least have a conservative audience. We can move forward with some amount of confidence. And that was actually the biggest, for me personally, that was the biggest takeaway from that Kickstarter experience, was like, okay, people want this. Like, I don't know how many people, and we want to keep our costs down because we can't bank on like a smash hit. That would be insane to just like, build your budgets and your sort of like expectations around a hit. That's stupid. But we could probably do X number of units conservatively. That feels good, and I think Kickstarter is, a lot of its benefits are talked about a great deal by people who are much more in the know about it than I am. But all I can say is, subjectively for me, knowing that there were people out there who were interested in what we were doing was a big, huge win for me.
And for all of us, we all got to see the game, and
everybody wins.
Instant classic, in my opinion. I think it's an instant classic in terms of, you have these games that give you the type of experience you're looking for, like dungeon crawling and stuff, but rarely do you have a game that's like all those things at once. The inventory management and all that is really good.
It's funny you bring that up. We get so many requests to like make the inventory larger.
No way.
And I understand why, of course you want to be able to carry more stuff, but I just love the payoff and that agony of like, God, do I drop the key? What if I find it? What do I throw away all my food? I just think that's so cool.
I feel like this game kind of takes everything people have known in RPGs up to that point, like having unlimited inventories and like 80 broadaxes on you at once, and it kind of like slaps you in the face with that. It's meta in a sense that you're like, I tell this person what to do, I'm the leader of this party, and they don't do what I want to do. Like, it's so immersive, but it also is aggravating, and that aggravation leads to being more invested, I think. It's really incredible what you've done, meta-wise, I think, just with the genre. It's still very much...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, we pulled a little bit from even just, like, game development experience. Like, you get to crunching, and some people buckle under the pressure, and some people... work a shit ton of hours and, do what has to be done at great personal cost. And so we would joke a lot because, both Tyler and I had been, managers and director level positions at other studios, and we'd kind of seen the effect that this can have. And so we would always sort of chuckle to ourselves that we were basically making a game about making games.
Well, this is your Darkest Dungeon in a way, like in a meta way, like...
Yeah, making the game itself actually
is the Darkest Dungeon.
It's been an awesome ride, but there was a lot of really stressful times even after, we launched early access. We got a lot of heat in the summer for some features that we added and changed.
Is that when you added bodies or something?
Yeah, corpses were a big contentious
That's
issue.
What I
thought.
Oh man, throw that fucking... The Vestal has that sweet like grenade that blights and then kills all your corpses. I love the positional aspect of moving, of having to deal with those bodies, and like I got to clear it out because I got to get that dude up here. And you don't think that there would be that much. Looking at a screenshot of the game, you cannot comprehend the amount of depth that goes into the tactical gameplay of those 2D side by side 4-on-4 fights and positionally how that comes into play, because I think at this point everybody's seen pictures of Darkest Dungeon, but until you actually get in there and start having to think about how you're going to get through this fight and then realizing there's a good chance you're going to fucking die in that fight that just randomly happened in that room,
it's deceptively deep. I would call it. Like you look at it and it's like, okay, well this is like a turn-based, like the old PlayStation games or like the Final Fantasies, but then you look at it and it's something that's completely its own. like those corpses things, like I never played before that was in the game. Like I never played before early access. I wanted to wait for the launch. But like these are all things that I'm like, oh, why is this in the game? And then I think about it a while and it's like, okay. Like they're turning the genre on its head and they're making you think like, well, where does the corpse go? Like sure I like critted him and like cut him in half, but the body's still there. Like I'm not gonna be able to bum rush him. And for a while, like I was trying these old RPG habits of just mashing kind of attack and cutting through the front ranks and then getting to the back. And that doesn't work too long because you take so much stress damage from that back row that you really do need to understand how you're going to deal with those problems early on before they become like a worse snowball problem. And
yeah, that's why they were added. I mean, you know, when we launched early access, it was very, very soon after. Like, it's amazing to me how quickly people just break your game. Like you could just, as a developer, I don't know, it's astounding. But we just saw people basically, we called it like the bandsaw. So you just sit there with a powerful front line and you would just chew through the enemies and they would slide forward into your, you know, jaws of death. And so we thought, you know, corpses were a nice, elegant solution. In and of themselves, they don't make the game any harder. And we never, you know, purported that they would. But what they do is they add a little bit more texture to the battlefield. You know, there's suddenly push and pull skills are much more important. You know, suddenly range characters, you know, have a role to play that you can't just, you know, sidestep. But I, you know, to be fair, I think that it was a big change, and I think my biggest regret as it relates to corpses is just that we didn't launch with them, because I think that you know, quite frankly, no one would have really noticed. But because they came in late and because people were attached to certain strategies, I think it was pretty jarring for people. And I think, you know, we didn't when we did launch them, the art was kind of sort of placeholder. Like I hadn't gone in and done up all the unique corpses per monster, and so we figured we're in early access. Like, isn't that the point? But I think that it was a big change, and we didn't, you know, sort of sell it well enough, and so that's where some of that blowback came from. Some people just don't like them, and that's why we added the option to toggle them off.
And that's awesome. I never touch any of those options, by the way. It's like I feel like I don't know. I feel like
this game was
yeah,
built
it's
the
perfect.
way that it was meant to be played.
Like it's kind of weird because like you have these companies that are losing respect all over the place, just in terms of the integrity of their marketing or whatever they're doing to PC gamers, like the poor PC gamers, us, you know. And it's nice to see Red Hook coming in like on such good integrity, like because I did do a bunch of research on that whole blowback about the corpses because I was like, I can't really imagine this game without corpses now, and like the details of all the corpses looking really good when they're down, like they're like the actual monster that they were, is just really cool. It's one of those details that kind of make up the game. And though it's a game that has shadows in places where some of the details are, like you said, when you do have a detail like that, it's there for a dang good reason, and that's just really, really cool for me. To be able to think out and like, they didn't do this because they wanted to add hours. They didn't do this because whatever. They did this because it helped the integrity of the game and it fit with the style. I mean, Darkest Dungeon, right? I mean, like, you're going to be up to your knees in corpses and you're like going to get out with barely your life and you might even become a corpse yourself. And so, I don't know. It's one of those little things that I felt like was interesting that it got the blowback, but it also makes sense because the internet is loud, you know, and like they hate change and you're always going to get some of it. But
that's actually a question I wanted to ask, because we, you know, obviously we put content out there not on the scale of anything like what you're doing, but a lot of times people will hit us up and be like, that was the most fucking retarded thing I've ever heard in my life. I can't believe you did that. It's like hard to not take that shit personally.
Yeah.
When you have that happening on the scale of like thousands of people going like, you broke my fucking game, I had 100 hours into this game, you just fucking, how do you
live with yourself? It's like,
how do you
well,
just put your head down and go, you know what, dude, I know what's best for this, and we got to keep moving forward. How do you deal with that negativity as a content creator?
I think you got to expect some hyperbolic reactions. This is the internet. You know, anonymity breeds exaggeration. So, you know, what's a mild inconvenience when you talk to someone face to face can become like, you know, something that sounds like the end of the world on the internet. So, you know, how we dealt with it is we read all of the feedback, even the most vitriolic, hateful stuff, we read through it. We look for sort of connections and kind of through lines, I guess. Like, a lot of people are talking about this area of the game. Now, some people are screaming for buffs, other people are screaming for nerfs. A percentage of people are always yelling that we don't know what we're doing and we're incompetent, but they're all sort of around this area. So we take all that feedback into consideration and then start thinking about, okay, what's the root problem? Because a lot of times what you get, I've found on the internet is when it comes to the negative stuff, because we've gotten a lot of really amazing constructive criticism, which a lot of times cuts right to it. But a lot of the sort of negative stuff is almost like the smoke, but it's not the fire itself. So you sort of have to do a little bit of analysis and think carefully about, okay, obviously there's a problem here. Obviously people are upset. We have to, even if you don't like the way it's phrased, you have to respect that they took the time to vocalize it. And sort of just go through a bit of a deductive process and try and figure out, what is it really that's going on here that's causing sort of all this static, I guess.
Yeah, it's a logic-based approach to the game.
But you got to try. But I mean, a lot of it, where it starts to get shady for me is, you get people who are really, really upset with you, personally, even though me personally, the game isn't really about me. That can get right. That can get dicey, and that stuff is kind of hard because it isn't really about the game. It's about like a perception about your company or about something you did, and that's hard. Just being exposed to that. But as far as the game stuff goes, we've been really blessed that we have a strong community. Even there's people on our Steam forums who've been there since day one, and they've had suggestions and they've been highly critical of the game. And we've listened to them and we've factored that into our discussions, our debates. We get a lot of emails, and by a lot of emails, I mean like hundreds of emails with like 5 pages of text, single spaced, about like, here's the problem with debuffs, blah.
Where my deeds at? That's what I want to email you.
Yeah. Like,
where my deeds at?
The deed problem is like right now it's the trending thing on our subreddit, right?
How can I do this without fucking level 2 weapons, Red Hook? Deeds. Yeah. I need my fucking deeds.
I need my deeds, son. So that stuff though is cool because it's a bit more. It's working at a level where they want to engage. These people are bringing suggestions to the table. We might not take the suggestions, but we respect the work that goes into that, and that makes our job a little bit easier, So if you're going to be mad at us, it's much more helpful to be mad in an articulate, constructive way than it is to be just mad. Yeah. But we'll read it either way. I mean, is the bottom line.
Cool.
You just got to ignore the verbs and focus on the subject.
Yeah. Look for the fire and don't choke on the smoke.
Cool. I like that. That's really solid. It's not even PR-y, which I think a lot of gamers are getting fed up with companies just feeding them mindless drivel. It's just like, install Origin and all will be better or something. Like, I don't know. It's just like weird marketing lingo for these big companies. So to get a game of passion out of like people like you, are you guys role-playing fans then, like D&D and stuff like that?
Our technical artist animator hosts a D&D game. I haven't played in a little while, but I grew up playing D&D. Earlier you mentioned like it had this like classic CRPG feel, and that's definitely something we wanted in there. Like the games I grew up playing, like Bard's Tale and Pool of Radiance, or 1 and 2, and those games were like learning how the game actually worked was part of the fun of the game. Like, we get a lot of comments about like our learning curve is really steep, but I feel like that's a style of game where you're dropping.
Dude, that used to be what you spent your summer doing, was trying to figure out how to fucking play that game, because that was the only game you had that summer, and they built them that way because they knew that was the case, and it wasn't so like breadcrumb trailed from point A to point B and like let us slap you in the face a few of these corners. And
do I love this? Do I love that about Darkest Dungeon? Just no hand holding. You have that one little quest in the beginning where you have Dimas and Reynold, and you're in the game, And
I fucking died that first time on that quest too.
Oh, some bad things. I've seen some funny like things happen in that quest. Like you can attract certain enemies that just like end your playthrough. I won't say any more because fighting these enemies are like part of the fun part of the game. And I kind of want to spend.
Even if you wipe on the tutorial when you arrive in town, there's 4 guys for you.
Oh, so seriously.
But part of it is like, and that, you mentioned PR. What PR we've done, and it's been very, grassroots, I guess. Like we don't have massive budgets for this stuff, but it's just been around embracing the failure, like that losing guys is just part of what's going to get you to the goal, and sometimes things go bad and you can't control it. You can't control everything. So some people, that the game is not for them because they feel like that means the RNG is too dominant, but that's actually the heart and soul of the game. Is that just like in a horror movie, things just go bad because they need to go bad, because that's what you're there to experience, is things going bad. And so we've always tried to talk about the game and describe the game as, to be successful, you need to get comfortable with loss and embrace it, and just accept that sometimes there's nothing you could have done. But over the long term, like a professional poker player over the long term will always make money, but he might lose a hand. And you had mentioned, Easy was, you had just fled a dungeon before we got on the podcast. That's always a smart move, because you preserve your investment in those heroes. And you're thinking about the long game. You're not saying, well, I'm owed a quest because it's a quest level 1 and my guys are level 1, so I should get a victory. And that's a fundamental sort of thing about Darkest Dungeon, is that you're never owed a success. Things could always just go bad. That's the game, is things going bad. And
then you go into damage control, and if you don't have that ability, from what I've noticed, because this is the type of player I am, I won't run. Like, not because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna stand up to these baddies, but just because I'm not trained to in RPGs. Like,
right.
In most RPGs, CRPGs, like, yeah, we have those hard games from our past, like the Baldur's games, I guess, and like the Divinity games, and there's all these hardcore games. But in a way, gamers have forgot, I think, and I'm one of them. I'll just find myself like pressing the attack button again, and then I'll get wrecked, and I'm like, okay, this is not the type of game where I'm just going to be able to click through. And the curios as well, like, if you're just mindlessly going through that and not matching the specific item or something, like, it's a game that really rewards your paying attention and observing those details, observing where you went wrong. Can't tell you how many times I wiped on the wizened hag before I figured something out, and still managed to lose like 2 highwaymen in the process. And now that battle, to me, it was a victory, but it was a bittersweet victory because I lost 2 of my favorite heroes, and the game is filled with that. And yet, somehow it manages not to take itself so seriously. And that's something I really respect about it. A lot, actually, is, like Easy said, you can walk by that window and it's not advertising itself, but you want to, like a kid, you want to know, you want to know how to play the hard game and how to get further in it. And you want to immerse yourself in that world. So for the last little bit, I kind of want to talk about your guys' favorite creature in the game that you found so far, and we can kind of talk to you, Chris, about the inspirations for that creature, if that sounds cool. What do you think,
Totally,
Easy?
yeah.
Oh, dude. So, okay. I fought a giant pig boss, and it's the only boss that I've gotten to and successfully fought. But apparently Wazoo's like, you haven't fought the hag yet? I'm like, no, I haven't fought the hag, but I killed this pig. But dude, that thing was fuck. The cool thing about, I didn't really understand, even to be honest with you, when I heard that it had a Lovecraftian style, what exactly that meant. So I looked up what Lovecraftian meant, and then I explained it to my wife. I was like, dude, it's like something so gross that you can't even fucking think about it. But not even like
makes you go insane thinking about it.
It doesn't have to be gory. It's just like you can't think about it. Like, go ahead, think of a dog. Now rip its side off. Now in its rib cage, put a baby trying to get out. That's Lovecraftian, dude. She's like, whoa.
Yeah, to me it's it's about the horror of the unknown and the cosmic insignificance of man. And so you come up against a giant pig that's sitting on a pile of its own entrails while a little pig squeals at you, and it's too much. It's too much.
The madness, you feel the madness.
No person would like what happens to the heroes in the game. You walk up to that thing and you go, "This is fucked," and you get stressed out, and you start. And your dude needs a drink because he's got the shakes, and then he steals something out of your other dude's pocket. Like, god damn it! What's your favorite creature, Wazoo?
It is someone I had the pleasure of running into over the weekend because I got to get quite a bit of time in, and that is, I'm not going to say how you get him because I feel like this is another interesting thing, and I looked it up and figured it out because I was like, what am I supposed to do? But the collector.
Oh yeah, that was actually a Kickstarter designed in collaboration with a Kickstarter backer.
No way. That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So at a certain tier, you could work with us to design a character class. That was the very very top tier, and that was actually turned out to be the Abomination.
Oh.
The guy who transforms. And then the tier below that could design an enemy. So we really wanted to make sure that this person backed us for a lot of money on a promise. So we really wanted to blow it out and make sure that they felt that they got the sort of red carpet treatment on the monster. So I talked to him, and he had a lot of ideas about, he loved the idea of heroes facing themselves and that kind of thing. And I was still pretty hot on the King in Yellow, and so I thought that would be a cool influence to bring in. And
so that is the influence then, the King in Yellow by
just
Chambers, right?
That he's a very regal figure. It's very one of the things, Ryan, the guy that we worked with on it, was really thought that because so many of the other monsters are just like you're saying, like it's a baby crawling out of a butthole in a dead pig upside down.
What is this shit, man?
Yeah. and he thought it would be really cool for contrast's sake to sort of embrace like a really understated enemy and have him horrific in the sense that he's almost impassive. And I thought that was really cool. So, his idol, he just has his hands down beside his, he's not moving unnecessarily. He's not, particularly ravenous. It's almost like serene, but it's unsettling because he's so calm. And then he pulls open his coat and you realize it's like a stack of heads and he's got no proper body and what are his arms attached to. And you're off to the races at that point.
I saw someone on Reddit, because the collector has a cage on his head, and someone was like,
Yeah.
why you have a cage on his head? And people were like, so other collectors can't collect his head. And I was like, okay, makes sense to me.
That's
Maybe there's like
I gotta
multiple
find
collectors
that
or
guy.
something. Yeah, it's a really interesting hero, or enemy, because there's some things that need to be met before, and it kind of goes into something we talked about earlier, but we'll let you guys figure that one out and have the horrendous experience where I'm like, oh, this just must be a unique enemy in the ruins or something. Cool, like let's do this, and just die and have to run away like screaming. He's one of those heroes or enemies that just the design is so well done that you're instantly terrified of him, but not in like it is a Lovecraft way, I suppose, but it's more of like it's extraterrestrial. It's so foreign that and all the sounds are done so well that you feel that fear.
The
We didn't
sound
even
design
really touch
is
on that, but the sound in the game is incredible.
Yeah, we really couldn't have been more fortunate. Like we got the Power Up Audio did the sound design, so all the effects, and they all sound awesome, especially the final dungeon. The enemies in the final dungeon is just off the hook. Yeah, obviously Wayne June with the narration is just blew it up.
Iconic is what it is.
Yeah,
Like it's just incredibly.
it's so
and
good.
when I hear a singular strike or something, like every single time, I'm just like, oh hell yeah, man! Like I say that out loud, which isn't something I've done with a game in a while.
Yeah, it just feels good. And I mean, he's in there because before kids, I used to stay up really late. I was like a night owl, and I just paint and draw and do stuff till 2, 3 in the morning. And he has a whole series of audiobooks that he's done, Lovecraft audiobooks. So I would just listen to those. And then when Tyler and I were talking about, the game and what would fit, we're like, Bastion was really cool. I don't know if we want to go that far. We need somebody for a trailer at the very least. We need wouldn't it be cool if we had somebody who sounded like Wayne June? And then we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, I guess we could just email him.
That is so cool.
Yeah, cool. And
Holy shit, Wayne June's on Fiverr.
it was it
Welcome
was easy.
to this
And then
Hamlet.
once the first trailer was done, it's like, okay, we got to go full narrator at this point, and then just kind of wrote him into the story, and that became one of the building blocks of the fiction. So
Bastion was an incredible game. Don't get me wrong, but it felt like the game, like it was more narration than it was game in ways. Like it was a fun game, but this game, it feels like everything kind of supports itself in a symbiotic fashion. Like I never feel taken out of a moment by Wayne June saying something. I feel more put into the moment. You know what I mean?
I feel like if you guys push through and complete the end game, there's there's more to it too. So I'd be excited to.
Oh, dude, I will
have to
get a
say.
hold of you. I will get a hold of you after I finish this and let you know whether or not we're still friends.
Subject of email will just be deeds, but it'll be deeds, and then you'll open it up and it'll just say deeds all the way down the email.
I'm gonna set a rule right now to filter that to my trash. Just so.
Man, I appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day to spend with us talking about the Darkest Dungeon. Thank you very much. Chris, we really appreciate it. For people that are listening to the show, go to Steam, search Darkest Dungeon, purchase the game. You will not be disappointed. If you want to connect with Chris on Twitter, he's actually... Thank you also for interacting with me so kindly on Twitter. I've tweeted out a few times just compliments regarding your art, and you have always very kindly responded saying, hey, thank you, I appreciate it. And, you know, to connect with your community on that level, when people are enjoying your game or when I'm enjoying an experience, to get to go to the next step of that and actually have a response, and even now, which is really awesome, but just to get a tweet back saying like, hey, thanks for saying that. Man, you feel that much more connected to the thing that you're enjoying, and so thank you for doing that. And just I hope that you do recognize that even all those little things that you do for the people out there that are enjoying your game, they enjoy it that much more, and they're more invested in your studio, they're more invested in your success. They are you don't have to roll the dice on your next project because people are excited to see what you've got going next.
And we'll be watching with bated breath. We really do want to see where
I can't
Red
wait
Hook
till
goes,
Darkest Dungeon goes to the snow.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not snow, maybe like in the Mountains of Madness or something. I don't know. Like, we could talk about it later. We'll figure it out. No, I'm talking.
You guys figure it out. Let me know.
Yeah.
And, we'll go from there. Well,
But,
I appreciate the kind words, man. That means a lot. We made the game for people, and it's just it's fantastic to live in an age where you can, unlike 10, 15 years ago, you can make a game and then suddenly watch people play it on the internet, watch people respond to it on Twitter, So it goes both ways. It's you make the game for the community. So community interaction isn't a burden for us. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, and that's great to have you on. That gave me a deeper understanding and a real appreciation for the game. You guys are in the right place, and I really appreciate anyone that lets me be able to not have to see my friends in a stinky room playing D&D. I can just role play in my office now.
There you go.
I don't need friends anymore. I've got Darkest Dungeon, and it'll just keep breaking my heart worse than my friends ever did. So, but are we gonna close out the show now? Easy? Anything else?
Oh, dude, I think we're good to go. Thank you, Wazoo, for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks again. We can find you on Twitter at it's Bourassa Art, right? Bourassa Art.
That's right. Yep.
And just hit him up, thank him for the art in the game. When you look at that game and you think it's beautiful, it's because of this guy's handiwork. You're at .p_Wazoo. I am at EasyMrcz. This has been an episode of .p Plays, and we played Darkest Dungeon this time and got to talk to the person that made the game. It was fucking awesome. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace.